Welcome to Quick Shots, a short format traditional archery podcast, where we introduce you to some of the world's most influential traditional archers, and occasionally, some random dudes. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Quick Shots. Today we have two very special episodes for you. Sarah Gamache, who in addition to being an exceptional hunter and archer, is wife to Caleb Gamache, U.S. Special Forces Green Beret, currently serving our country in combat zones around the world. And Daniel Liss, U.S. Army retired and an incredible longbow shooter with a ton of experience and archery knowledge. These two episodes of Quick Shots are dedicated to all veterans in the U.S., the Commonwealth, and allies that help and continue to help fight to preserve our freedoms. On this Veterans Day / Remembrance Day, take time to reach out to a veteran or family of a veteran and just say hi. How you doing? You don't have to say thank you for your service. Just let them know that you're thinking about them. God bless the men and women that served or have served to defend our freedoms. They do it for us, lest we forget. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Quick Shots. I'm your host, Mick Chambers, and we're here today with Longbow Dan. Dan, how you doing?
Good, you?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it, man. It's been a while. We should have had you on like right away because I get a lot of requests for longbow stuff, like a lot. And I think that's kind of cool. As you know, we were talking, I recently got a longbow myself. I've had one before, but you know, it's a tough product to shoot. It makes it even harder to shoot. But anyway, hey, I of course know you, and I got to shoot with you this summer, but, maybe some people don't know you. I find that hard to believe, but, why don't you introduce yourself anyway and give us kind of your background, your origin story in archery.
All right, so I started shooting a longbow in 2010 time frame, maybe a little bit sooner than that, 2009. I hunted with a compound growing up as a kid, and I grew up in Illinois. And literally after the first year I killed with my compound, my dad handed me a recurve. I didn't kill anything for 5 years, and it just drove me crazy. Right, the simplest mechanics of a longbow or a recurve, and I couldn't figure it out. And that was before that was with dial-up internet. So I'm trying to figure out like how to get better. And you're like, dee, like you're never going to get it. Yeah. But, so I started shooting, I started getting better at it, started competing locally and whatever. And it just grew. The love of it got awesome. And early on, I started going to ASAs and IBOs when I was in the service. And that's where I got to meet people like Calvin Smock and Dwayne Martin and those guys. And those guys were crushing it. And I'm like, what are you doing? Right. And they had methods, like specific aiming methods, even out to 25 yards. And that's where I started gap shooting and whatnot. And once I started playing around with a lot of things, I started the Longbow Theory, which is a YouTube channel. And that was in 2016. So that was right about when I was about to get out of the service, or maybe 2015. But right when I was getting out of the service, I started that. And I just want people to get better. Like if you look at the stigma, of trad guys, yeah, we can't hit anything. You know what I mean? Like you can't hit the broadside of a barn, but as you saw at IBO Worlds,
absolutely,
guys are insanely accurate out to 33. That's the max, plus or minus yardage. It's incredible. Even guys like Tony Tall with a self bow. He literally cut an inch off at each end of his bow the night before and went out and sent it and crushed it. It's super cool to see what these guys do. And just the love keeps growing, right? So I did take a pretty good break from it. After I got out of the service, I went and moved to Amman, Jordan, and did some government work over there. And I couldn't have my bow. I got to shoot a lot of guns and do a lot of cool things with international teams. But it wasn't the same, like when I was in the service, shooting my bow got me away from the guns, got me away from battle drills and the chaos of combat, basically. And it stuck with me. I love it, man. It's definitely,
and it's
my favorite thing to do.
Right. And your channel is back up and running and humming now, right? And
yep.
Yeah, so people should check that out too. I mean, obviously, there's some great stuff up there and longbow stuff, but not just longbow stuff, but how to aim process and stuff like that, arrows and stuff. It's really good. So if you haven't checked out Dan's What was the name of the YouTube channel
It's
again?
just Longbow Dan now. I just made it simple. I kept it the same name on all the platforms. So
Okay, cool. So Longbow Dan
yeah.
there on YouTube and Longbow Dan on Instagram too.
Yep.
Hit you there. That's good. Hey, so there's another reason why we have you on the podcast today and that is, I think you brought it up here, your service to the United States. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much. You know, we have November 11th is coming up, or you'll be hearing this on November 11th. So just want to thank you for your service. Just phenomenal, man. You know, the stories that you shared with me, just the small stories. Just really appreciate that, man. Thank you for your service and to the country.
Well, thank you too. Because if I remember correctly, you did a little bit of something.
Yeah, I know. I was in the Army. I did a Canadian Army for 6 years and couple tours, 3 tours. So yeah, you know, it's that time of year I get a little sentimental about things, you know. I just think that we got to just take care of our veterans and make sure that everyone's, you know, safe and happy. And if you're a veteran listening to this right now, you know, you can reach out probably to Dan or myself, anyone, if anyone wants to talk and they're a veteran and they feel like they need to talk, man, I'm always open to chatting. And especially if you shoot arrows, I won't shut up.
Yeah, always. Yeah, always. I'm always available for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing. We love all our veterans. We love our men and women serving in the military now too. So, hey, enough on that somber note. I do want to talk to you a little bit about like just your entire process of shooting, because I've been watching a couple of your videos and stuff like that. And I got to shoot with you at Worlds this year. You're lights out, man. You're doing you're doing awesome. I don't understand how someone can shoot that good, like you were saying, that good with a longbow. I mean, what's your secret sauce?
It's the same thing you do.
Yeah, no.
It's the same thing. You know, I think with the longbow, what a lot of people don't realize is a solid bow arm. You know, like it's especially when you get to those lighter rigs. You know, like right now I'm shooting the Big Jim Thunderchild, and it's only 56 inches. So it's super short bow, which is great for the blind and everything else. But for tournaments and competing, you know, I'm bringing a dull knife to a gunfight. You know, it's just practice, right? Learning if you're going to be a gap shooter, learning your gaps. If you're going to be instinctive, getting very good at instinctive. And a lot of it for me is yardage. You know, I'm one of the guys that I like relative speed in my setup.
Yeah.
Because yardage, once you get past 20 yards, 25 yards, yardage guessing is a huge game, right? Especially if you're a gap shooter. If you misjudge by 5 yards, you're shooting under or over the animal, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And my process is, you know, I've watched Tom Klum, listened to Dwayne Martin, and, you know, it's kind of a mix. I don't necessarily do the NTS system. It's kind of more of a linear draw, but I do hold a little bit longer. And that just helps settle my sight picture, right? So it's kind of hard to just pick one, because as the season changes or what I'm wearing, you know, like if it's super cold outside and I'm wearing a bunch of layers, you know, keep pulling comes into my head a lot more, because I know I'm wearing more layers and I'm just prone to collapsing more. So just really depending on the situation, which is probably what makes it worse for me in the long run, because I'm a tinkerer, you know, like I'm always trying to play with stuff.
Just time out there. That was just some veteran shooting, like mojo right there that you just laid down, because this, you know, that for me, like I'm not a veteran hunter like you are, not even a veteran in the sport, to be honest with you. But you know, more layers, you know, I do find that it's, you know, when I have different clothes on, I draw the bow, or if I'm in a stand, a tree stand, or I'm in a blind, right? Or just, I use natural blinds. I don't actually go into a blind. I never have. But yeah, and I kind of practice for that, Dan. Honestly, I kind of go, okay, well, I'm going to do a short draw here, and I'm not going to be able to do this. So I'm going to have to let go here. And so I kind of practice, you know, what I think my situation is. That's some interesting stuff. So tell us a little bit more about, so you got more clothes on, you think you draw shorter, or?
So when I'm wearing more layers, right, it's generally colder out. And just with being cold and the moment and everything, you know, a lot of guys tend to pull less than pull more. So,
Wow.
and it's just because you feel like that, right? Your clothes are tighter generally, and you feel like you might be at full draw.
Yeah.
But because of those added layers, it's just a feeling. It's not real life.
Wow.
So by just continuing, like, using Joel Turner for an example, to keep pulling, keep pulling, keep pulling, and working through, my mantra for say, that helps me continue with good alignment and good form, or, and I use a little bit of what everybody says. And I look at practice a lot different than a lot of people do. And I've done a video on it before, but basically, like, I try to have one bow and use it for everything, because the more I can stick with one piece of equipment, the better I should get with it, right?
Yeah.
And I look at, all of 3D throughout the summer is basically, we'll start with my backyard. My backyard is testing stuff out, trying new things, getting comfortable with it. And then I test it on the 3D field, right? I test it at 20-yard spot shoots, because that's solidifying that my equipment is working, because now it's based for score and it's got added pressure. Dwayne Martin said a long time ago, if you can't shoot 10s in your backyard, you're not going to be able to shoot 10s in the competition. And I believe that, and just like in the service, before you went into a real house, and did, close quarter combat, you did it with rubber dummy weapons or blank firing, right? And sometimes even with a glass house, just ropes on the ground simulating the walls. And then you'd go do it dry fire, blank fire, and then live fire. And I look at it kind of the same approach. So my backyard is my testing and evaluating and getting things kind of organized. And then 3D shooting is solidifying that it works or it doesn't work. I need to scrap it and start over.
Right.
And then even hunting is testing, but hunting is like the end game, right? My stuff needs to be legit for hunting, because if I miss on a 3D target, it sucks shooting a 5, but I'll get over it. But if I gut shot a deer and I don't find it, that's another story mentally. So, I kind of go off of a basis of like a crawl, walk, run, using my backyard in the 3D season, and then hunting as just building blocks to my practice.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and every arrow is different, right? If I go out in the backyard or shoot with buddies, I don't look at that as practice necessarily, unless we're making it competitive. Because a lot of people go in the backyard and they're like, I'm going to go practice shooting my bow, and they shoot 200 arrows. Well, not every one of those arrows is a rehearsed practice arrow, right? And for every time you put a bad habit behind an arrow, you ingrain a bad habit.
Yeah, you're right.
So
on the theme of this show is always the same thing: get a coach. And I don't know if you've had a coach,
yeah.
But coaching, right? You need coaching, whether that is a guy that's been doing it 5 years longer than you or not. I mean, why waste that time? You're hacking through the jungle. You're supposed to make the path behind you a little bit clearer, each time. So, yeah. I hear what you're saying. And it's old martial arts saying is sweat in the dojo, sweat more in the dojo, bleed less on the battlefield, sort of thing, right? So
yeah, exactly. And what's awesome about our community is, even at the pro level, like if you look at Dwayne Martin or John Demmer, those guys, if you send them a text, or not a text, but if you message them on Facebook, they generally get back to you fairly quickly. Like trad isn't so large yet that these guys aren't consumed by thousands and thousands of message requests, so like, especially at this point now, take advantage of all of these guys you can and learn as much as you can, because eventually, the way I see traditional archery growing, especially, with the higher end guys doing it, like Levi Morgan talked about picking up a stick bow if he was allowed to.
Yeah.
Aaron Snyder, like some of these bigger name guys are doing it, and they're bringing tons of people from the compound world. And who knows, 10 years from now, it would be awesome if Dwayne Martin was making a full-time living shooting his bow, and they were doing large payouts at ASA and IBO like they do for the men's pro elite classes, but at this point it's not. So the accessibility to those guys is so much easier. So that's my biggest recommendation, is like, take advantage of those guys, like and it's not taking advantage of it. They love teaching, it's not a bad thing. They'll tell you anything you want.
Yeah, no, you just really do. It's true. You can message them, you can walk up to them. It was a big shock to me because, again, I've not been in this community very long. And then, I went to the Worlds in Tennessee, and I took my camera and I just walked up to people and said, "Hey, you want to do an interview?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do that." I'm like, I was more nervous to do that than any shooting I did while I was there, although I was nervous shooting. And that was another good point that you brought up, about being able to be, score tens in your backyard. But it's a little bit more difficult when you get in that 3D range. I love people who like to talk about, yeah, I'm really good. I'm a good archer. I'm a good archer. But then, and they show their tens on Instagram, but they don't, just be honest about it, right? Be honest about it, because then you don't get disappointed or you don't get let down when you go to an actual tournament and maybe you don't do that well because of the pressure. Pressure is important. It's always good to pressure test out all your stuff. All your stuff is
Pressure turns coal into diamonds. I think if you want to become a better hunter, you need to compete. If you want to get more accurate, you need to compete. I mean, you felt it at Worlds. You said you're kind of new into it, but even at Worlds, day two, especially when you know your scores from day one, is mind crushing. It's insane if you let it get to you. And that's the same thing when you're in the woods. If you let the emotions get to you, you're going to fall back to your lowest level of training. And if you're not prepared for that, you're going to make a bad shot. So,
yeah. And like, as you said, a bad shot on an animal is crushing. It's crushing. That's all that you think about for days, weeks, sometimes. I've had one instance, and again, I'm not very familiar with hunting. Like, so this last doe I took was number 10. But I had actually shot. I've never taken a buck, so I hit a buck, and we couldn't find it. And I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened when the shot. We didn't have video back then, or at least I wasn't taking a video back then. I could not find it. It was crushing me, man. It was not good. Put a good shot on an animal, you feel it for a while. So talk to me about this bow that you've got, 56-inch.
Yeah, so it's a Big Jim's Thunderchild.
Yeah.
It's a two-piece. It's kind of cool. It comes apart in the handle, so you'd never know it's a two-piece unless I unstrung it and took it apart for you.
Yeah.
But my whole bow set up basically, and I'm a tinkerer, so I literally tried something new today. But it's a Big Jim's Thunderchild, 56-inch, 53 at 28. I'm pulling 55 on it, and I've got just a Selway strap-on quiver, 6-arrow quiver. I run the 6-arrow quiver because I get to hold another arrow, right? It makes my bow heavier,
Yeah.
which translates to a little bit steadier hold, in my opinion. But so I run that setup. Today I threw a bare weather rest on. I shoot these trad vein era. I bought another pack today, but I want to get them to tune off the shelf, but it's got to be perfect, right? And then everyone talks about the weather rest and all these different types of rests. If you throw a weather rest on, and no kidding, I'm getting bullet holes with 4 fletch out of it,
Yeah.
and I had to do a little bit of not knock tuning, but moving my knock point up and down, but literal bullet holes. I even posted one on Instagram today after about 5 minutes of tinkering with it. And arrow flight has just gotten
weather rest.
Yep. Literally probably the oldest, not the oldest, but it's just a stick-on rubber rest.
Yeah. Of course, I know this one.
Yeah.
It's a black one. Yeah, that you stick on.
Yeah. So I literally just slapped that on today and just retuned it a little bit. Tomorrow after work, I'll go find my gaps again and then probably go back out hunting on Sunday. But
now, why won't you shoot? So you don't want to shoot off the shelf?
I do, but it's if you're not perfect, a longbow inherently is a little bit harder than a recurve. But if you don't shoot that longbow even more perfect, you're gonna get contact with them veins, especially if you're running 4 fletch. I've tinkered around with 3 fletch, and I've got 3 setups right now. They're all on the Platinum Pierce shaft. Okay. One's got the AAE Max Stealth veins. One's got, and that's a 3 fletch Max Stealth.
Yeah.
One's got 4 fletch trad veins, and one's 4 fletch feathers.
2-inch?
3-inch feathers.
3-inch.
Yep. So I'm running 4 3-inch veins and 4 3-inch feathers. So they look identical. Like if I held them out 10 yards from you, you wouldn't even know which one's which. But feathers, I get great flight, but the feathers lay down a little bit. The vanes, they lay down, but not as much as the feathers do. And I slow mo all my shots when I'm tuning, and I can see a little bit of a knock high kick out of it. And it drove me crazy. It drove me super crazy. And I even
feathers are the AEs.
The feathers, the vanes kicked. The trad vanes kicked. Yeah. But I mean, I could probably tinker around a little bit more and find a better vane position and whatnot. But I want more of a robust system that in the event I do make a bad shot, or not a bad shot, but like my form isn't up to snuff.
Yeah. You're going to take a lot of
much more forgiving shot.
You're going to take sorry, I'll stop you for a second. You're going to take a lot of flack for saying that longbows are not as forgiving as recurves.
Well, I mean, if you think about the longbow, okay, so when I compare a longbow and a recurve, I'm comparing longbows and like modern recurves that are cut way past center and all this stuff. A lot more tunability. Yeah. And I've shot a very modern longbow setup, I have a Dryad UL19, and it's got a huge shelf on it. I can do whatever I want with it. I can run almost any arrow setup I want out of it. Mm-hmm. But on a wood longbow, it's, how do I want to say it? How do I want to compare it? So in my opinion, the hooks on a recurve help keep a more consistent string alignment behind the arrow shaft than what a longbow provides.
For sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, of course it does.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. You're not worrying about paradox as much. Is that what
Well, I mean, you're going to get paradox, but the hooks make that string come out of your fingers a little bit differently than with just a regular D shape or even a reflex longbow.
Right.
Because you got the performance of the hooks working with you.
For sure.
And I think it just helps with
the recurve, you mean?
The string coming out. Yeah. So I think it just helps with the string coming out the fingers versus on a longbow. If I'm off a little bit, that's going directly to the limbs, and that's gonna throw different things off, especially with how my arrow reacts on my shelf, how my nock travel is going to be. Because if you think about it, like carbon arrows are probably the most forgiving thing on the planet, and we figure out how to make them the hardest thing in the world with tuning. But if you have a clean release, you can shoot almost any arrow setup you want. And when I say that, I've done it, I can take a 340 spine shaft and I can shoot 250 grains up front, or I can shoot 200 grains up front on the exact same arrow, and I can get the exact same bullet hole. A lot of guys don't understand that carbon was designed to recover faster than aluminum, right? And then aluminum was designed to recover a little bit faster than wood. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just had a pretty good conversation with Cody Greenwood about his new shafts, Trad Lab. Mm-hmm. And, carbon is designed to recover super fast. So it takes a lot to really take an arrow out of tune if you've got a good release. If you've got a crappy release and it's not consistent, you're going to see different things every single time you release that string, whether it's the same point weight or if it's 50 grains less. But generally in the ballpark, I start to see a big notice in changing a carbon arrow with about 30 grains. That's where I can start to see that arrow moving a little bit in paper. And I do paper tuning on all my stuff before I go out in the backyard and start shooting bear shafts. And now I work at an archery shop, so I've got instant access to a paper tuner, and I just shoot my bow all day, and fix crossbows. But I think a longbow, it's just.
So but to be fair, a 64-inch longbow is going to be more forgiving than what your rig is. No?
Oh yeah, most definitely. It's going to change the string angle.
56 is
56. Yeah, I could literally take it apart and stick it in my pant leg. Yeah, it's short. It's a short bow, but I like it, and I just ordered another one, but I got to wait a year for it because he's a year out.
Why'd you order two different weights?
Nope, same weight. I just want a backup.
Yeah,
literally that's it. Just a backup bow.
Two is one and one is none.
Exactly. And I never really thought about it a lot. We always buy extra arrows. We always buy all this other stuff. And I started seeing some of these other guys I can't be that guy that has 15 different bows. I can't do it. I've tried it. I've had it. and I never get good with any of them because I'm always playing with them. But if I can get the same thing or close to the same, I might change the wood on it, go with a different veneer and whatnot. But it's basically going to be the same thing. It's going to be another 56-inch, 53 pounds at 28, two-piece takedown longbow.
There's no one. I mean, and you're shooting competitions with this bow?
Yeah, I probably shouldn't be, but I did.
It's crazy. That's good because because my listeners not all of them are going to know, a lot about the competition circuit and stuff like that. But at 53 pounds, that is probably 10 pounds heavier than the people who win the tournaments, right?
Yeah, no, I would say so for sure. Like I went with, so I went down there and hung out with Blake Hunter a lot.
Yeah.
And he was probably one of the only other guys I knew. I think there was another guy named Danny. But there was only a handful of us shooting over 50 pounds.
Yeah. I think Lee, I talked to Lee, he was telling me he won it. Right. Lee, I forget his last name. Longbow.
Modern longbow or? So I shot in the trad hunter class though.
Oh, you shot trad hunter. That's right too.
Yeah, I did. I shot trad hunter because I thought it was gonna be heavier weight bows, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
When I saw 450 grains per pound, or it was 10 grains per pound, I was thinking, man, at least I'm gonna get some 45-pound bows here. No, guys are just shooting real lightweight stuff with heavier arrows. So, but
the point-ons were probably like, what was that out to? 20? What was that? 25 max?
25 max. Yeah, my point-on was at 36, 25 yards and about 12 inches low. But some of these guys were shooting like 20-yard point-ons.
Yeah,
they were shooting super lightweight setups with heavier arrows and a full-length shaft. But to be fair, there was probably, I could literally throw broadheads on and go hunting that afternoon if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Like that's how my bow is set up because I'm just a one bow or one style type of bow type of guy.
Yeah, I know. When you say that, I feel like that's an indictment against me because I'm such a scatterbrain. I got so many stupid bows.
I am too. If I've got more than one bow, I'm the same way. And it's hard because not that my bows get jealous, right? They're dead pieces of wood, but it's like I feel like I need to give them all love. And it's like, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to sit today.
I know. Dude, and I've got problems. I got 99 problems. Because I've Lancaster's on, the Classic's on this year. So I've got a bare bow set up for that for 18 meters. I've got my hunting bow, which is my WF-19, which I took a nice doe out with a couple nights ago. And then that was my process was through, Dwayne Martin helped me out with my process at the Bear Bow Boot Camp. So that was kind of cool. But anyway, so going back to you, you are shooting so you got one bow, you're doing it all. And then just really quickly, so you're hunting now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I probably have the worst luck out of anybody right now. So I don't know why I picked this year to start college and go full-time right off the bat, but man, it's a full-time job. And all you guys that are in college right now with no kids, like you're lucky, but if you're married and have kids and a job, it's crazy. But so I have that, I work, COVID, right?
Yeah.
And then the times I do get out, I'm that kind of guy, like I'm not super loud when I get in and out of my tree stand, but I like stalking, right? So normally I got this big chunk of, I don't know, it's probably like 200 acres total or whatever. And I'll drive around the whole property before I go hunt. And if I see deer out there, I'll park my truck appropriately with the wind and I'll get out and I'll try to make a quick stalk or something.
Oh, cool.
But the other day, this was a couple days ago, I got out and I had a little buck and a doe, probably 150 yards out, 200 yards out. And I'm like, perfect. Wind's in my face. It was crappy out. It was raining. It's super loud outside. And I'm like, I got this. And I sneak up within about 50 yards of the two. And then I throw a grunt call out because the rut's starting to get near. Yep. And they don't see a decoy or nothing. So they kind of walk in the woods. I'm hoping they're going to circle around and try to get upwind of me or downwind of me. And I'm like, all right, I got this. So I kind of move a little bit more forward and I sit and nothing, right? They're gone. They don't care. That buck and that doe are doing their own thing. So I'm like, whatever, I got a ground blind. probably another 100 yards out in front of me. And I get to my ground blind, and I don't know if you use scents or not, but I've been using this Evercalm. It's like a deer calming scent.
Yeah.
And so far I've had it work really well for me. I've been able to have deer downwind of me for a lot longer, I feel, than if I didn't have it. Like it's buying me a little bit more time with animals downwind of me. But I bend over, put my bow down, I open up my ground blind, and all of a sudden I hear this stomp behind me, and I've got that little tiny buck I saw 7 yards behind me, just staring at my butt. I'm bent over, hand on the ground blind, bow's not in my hand. I don't even have an arrow nock,
Dude.
And I like almost look between my legs, and I'm like, oh. Like I'm stuck. I can't do nothing,
Oh, he's busted you.
Well, he didn't snore. He didn't do nothing. He ended up just not liking me and walked off, and I was just like, yeah, of course, and then last night I went out, I've got one buck I've been chasing. A lot of people are asking me why haven't I killed anything yet, and it's because I target certain animals, and that's what I want. Gun season's getting closer, so I might, how do I want to say it without sounding rude? I might stray from my, what is it? What do I want to call it?
Your ethics,
not my ethics, but I've got certain things I want, right? Like if it was a woman, there's certain things I look for.
Okay.
If I go out on a night drinking, they might lower, right, standards. So with rifle season coming, I'm married now, I'm happy, 10 years, whatever. But with rifle season coming, my standards might lower a little bit. So, but I went out last night and I saw the target buck I wanted, and he was down in the row of corn, and I'm up in a tree, and I throw another grunt call, looking right at me, but again, no decoy, no nothing. So he just kind of walked back in the corn, and I make a sneak on this guy, and I probably half the distance to him, and all of a sudden the farmer comes out, and, and so it's a sugar beet field that he literally just plowed that day. I mean, I was watching him plow when I was up in the tree stand, and he's throwing sugar beets in piles. Rifle season's in 10 days. I know what this guy's doing. I'm not stupid. I know he knows that buck's in there too.
Yeah.
And, and I'm just like, I'm sitting here, now I'm in a row of corn. I'm in one row of corn out from the field, and I'm just on a knee, got my head down. I can just see this farmer in and out of his UTV, just throwing sugar beets. And he's got this little scrappy dog that barks at everything.
Oh, Jesus.
And so I sit there for about 15 minutes. The deer is gone, and I stand up. That farmer left his damn dog out there, and that dog started chasing me like right into the corn, started barking at me. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, why?
You busted. So all that time, you're busted. Yeah, it's no good.
Yeah. So I got that one buck. I got like, it's the 16th. So 9 more days to make something happen. If it gets that bad, I'll just start shooting does.
I don't mind shooting doe. I was happy.
I don't like shooting does during the rut though. I don't like shooting them during the rut.
I think there's some people, I don't know. I'm not an expert, but I do know that if I see a doe and I don't see a buck with that doe and it's a good sized doe, I take it. I take the shot.
Yeah. I mean, if I saw grandma walking by, and I knew she wasn't fertile anymore, yeah, I'd probably do it too.
Yeah.
And I'm spoiled. I was spoiled growing up. I grew up in Illinois. We had our own property, and we had a 140-inch minimum, for deer. And I got spoiled from it. And I've seen tons of little tiny bucks this year up here in Michigan, and I'm just like, nope.
Yeah, I let one walk. I let a little buck walk too. But because I know that because I have on camera, I have a massive 8-point. That doesn't sound massive, but
they get pretty big.
The neck on this guy, I showed him to Cody the other day. Cody thinks he's about 7 years old. Like, so.
Because of the neck size, or is he just rutted up?
He's just, I this was, I have him on camera from like weeks ago. So I don't know what that causes that, but it looks like he's just a massive old dude, and he looks old on the camera. I don't know how to explain it, but you know
more
Oklahoma.
About that.
Yeah. Hey,
You're in
Kansas.
Oklahoma?
Kansas.
Kansas.
Yeah.
Oh, so you got farm properties all over you. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same kind of deer. I mean, it's just big, agricultural deer, like they get big. Like I used to hunt in the South, and my German Shepherd's as big as some of the deer down there. But it's a whole different ball game. It depends where you're at. It's harder to hunt those deer because they're in the swamp, but
Mhm.
um, yeah, everywhere you go, it's different. Even in the South or like in North Carolina, where I stationed at, the antlers grew like straight up. It was super cool. Like, where in the Midwest, it's more of a basket.
Mhm.
It just depends where you're at. So I think it's super cool to see the different subspecies even within the whitetail deer.
Yeah. Do you hunt anything else other than whitetail?
I mean, I've killed, I was stationed up in Alaska. I got a caribou and a black bear while I was there, and
Oh, nice.
got some pigs when I was down south. But uh, next year, and you should come, Cody, you need to listen to this. But Cody was talking about doing another bison hunt,
Yeah. Yeah.
and but the rule is you got to bring your longbow and we got to shoot wood arrows.
Yeah, I'm in. I'm so in. Like I've got this new bow from Keegan. Um, out of he's out of Pennsylvania. And it's a beauty, man. It's a shooter. I love it. It's actually fixing my form and making me a better archer. And I got some uh, arrows from a buddy of mine, some wood arrows. He made me some nice ones, tuned it to my bow, and yeah, it shoots great with wood arrows. I love it. It's a fun bow to pick up. Again, I'm one of these guys that tinkers around with a bunch of different bows, and that's why I'm not good at anything. So, but I love it now. Really loving it.
It's fun. Yeah, I'm excited to see like Cody with his hardwoods that he's doing them up front.
Yeah,
Because the one thing I hate about wood arrows is keeping them straight. Like
yeah,
especially if they're not done properly,
yeah.
you'll sit there and just beat them with a roller for a while to keep them straight. But I'm excited to see that new footing and see what it does to just maintain the overall shape of the shaft. Because I wouldn't mind shooting wood again. The first deer I ever killed was with, you know, I don't shoot that heavy of an arrow anymore, but the first arrow or whitetail I took was with a 65-pound longbow, 748 grain laminated birch shaft arrow. And it had a single bevel, two blade that was literally cut out of a circular saw blade and then
Oh,
sharpened and honed and everything. Yeah, wood knocks and everything.
that's cool.
But I shot that deer. So I didn't recover this deer. My uncle ended up shooting him a week later, but I hit that deer right in the shoulder. Like it sounded like my dad even came over. Like, what was that?
Mhm.
It sounded like a shotgun going off, and it was just so loud. But what I did was I popped one lung, and the wooden shaft broke right into the shoulder. So I only got about 3 inches of penetration,
Oh, yeah.
and that kind of steered me away from those heavy arrows. And I mean, that could have been just me as a new hunter,
Mhm.
but going that heavy, it definitely helps. But man, when a whitetail clinches, like that shoulder turns into like concrete. It doesn't really matter what you're shooting. You're going to lose a lot of penetration. And, that right there kind of set me on my path of, finding a happy balance between light and heavy, something where if I do misjudge my yardage, it's picked up because of the couple of feet per second that are there. And that's what really kind of made me work on like getting better at gap shooting and understanding deer behavior. Because a lot of people shoot at deer that they shouldn't be shooting at just because of the way the deer is, right? If you shoot at a deer that's super spooky,
Yeah.
or on high alert, he's going to duck your arrow, or he's going to clench up and drop back and you know get ready to launch forward, and you're going to miss. And it's just, I mean, it's a learning thing, right? It's super fun, and that's what I love about it. And I'm still learning to this day. I got busted, the other day, and
Yeah.
it's just fun. I love it.
Yeah, and that's what we do it for. But it's interesting too that you're not just um you're not just a hunter, although that again you said at the very beginning, it's like, hey, that's what we do this for. But you're competitive too. You're very competitive. So you're going to the tournaments, you're putting in the hours, you're putting in the reps, you're in your backyard, slamming it all the time. So and you know what you're talking about. So that's pretty cool too. I mean, that's interesting that, some people just, I keep hearing it all the time. It's like I know guys that are hunters that are, 10 times better than the guys that show up at tournaments. Yeah, maybe.
But they're not better shooters.
But yeah, we don't.
If they
Well,
were a better shooter, it would probably make them a better hunter too. Like
yeah,
shooting is half the equation. You
yeah,
got to be able to shoot to hit what you want.
yeah,
Um, some of
yeah.
it's a pride thing, some of it's an ego thing, and some of
I,
it's just a loner thing, right? People don't want to be around other people. So
I actually, I wasn't sorry. That wasn't an indictment. I honestly think we don't see him. I'm just saying we don't see him at tournaments, so we don't know, right? Even if you're
yeah,
successful in the field, I'll tell you right now. In my, Cody hates me will hate me, but killing a white-tailed deer is kind of easy. It's like but it's recovering and they're usually not that far. You can get pretty close to a whitetail, to shoot it if you want to. And so in Kansas, I should caveat that. So if you hit them, they usually die. In my experience, I've only have my limited experience I've had. I've never not recovered. I've only had that one deer that I didn't recover. I did put good shots on almost every single one of them though. And I don't know what it is, Dan. I don't experience target panic the way I do on a 3D course when I'm out in the field shooting. Right. So I've been
well, it's
lucky.
self-imposed, right? I mean, when you're standing around all these people, you feel like you have to make a good shot. So it's all self-imposed. And if you look at guys like Dwayne Martin and those kind of guys that are at that level, they just don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they're there shooting their bow. They just don't care anymore. Where guys like you and I still care the world about it. Like
Yeah.
I get so into it. I count score, right? I keep score in my head throughout the entire course.
Yeah.
And that's a really bad problem I have. And my good Santo, he tells me to stop, and it's hard, but it's just what I do, because I know a number in my head of what I'm capable of doing.
Yeah.
And if I start falling below that number, I'm like, all right, now I got to start shooting 11s,
Yeah.
or I got to start shooting 12s if it's ASA.
Yeah.
But that's tough. I mean, competing is tough. I think competing and hunting are two different things. But if you hunt, it's not going to make you better at competing. If you compete, it's going to make you a better hunter.
Yeah. I agree with that. But I do respect people's opinions that they don't like they don't like competition, or they don't want to be in competition, or they can't do competition and hunt. Those are, there's those arguments, right? So I think anyway, at least I advocate all the time. It doesn't matter if you hunt or don't hunt, tournament or no tournament, in your backyard or not. You're a very competitive person. You love to go and do those things. I just want to make the sport grow, right? I just want people in it.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Yeah, you do too. Yeah, of course you do.
It's not intimidating though, and that's the thing. I mean, it's only intimidating if you make it. And start local. You know what I mean, and work your way up. Don't The first competition you go to should not be at IBO Trad Worlds. Go compete with other guys that are shooting 5s and 8s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
Make yourself feel a little bit better. Start to get a little bit better, and then start shooting the 10s and 8s. And then you get to the level like Paul Helms or those guys where they hardly miss the 10 ring, and then get there. It's stepping stones. It's definitely not instant gratification in this community. You're not going to get it. It's a lot of time and trial and error. So,
yeah. I definitely made the mistake of going to this trad or the trad worlds as my very first archery tournament. That was like the stupidest thing ever. But you know what? At the same time, I got to meet a lot of great people. We met, we shot. It was great.
How much did you learn though? You know what I mean?
So much. Seriously, I was like all over the place. I learned that. I learned a ton. I learned a ton while I was there. And I learned to not be as nervous the next time.
So that's one side of competing a lot, right? If you compete with people, the more you make friends with them, it's not really competing anymore. You're just BSing and shooting with your friends. Exactly. So I do think that if you look at anything, right, even if we take guns into occasion, what drives the gun industry? It's not military, it's competitive shooting. Military takes things from competitive shooting, incorporates it into their training, which incorporates it into real world stuff. The same thing in trad, like the guys that compete, I'll probably say 70% of the guys that compete shoot their bow more than the guys that just hunt, you know, because they're always trying, they're testing, they're evaluating, they're wanting to get better, you know. And like I was talking about earlier with the way that I look at things, 3D just solidifies that my hunting setup is good for the woods. Like that's all I do is I beat the snot out of my hunting equipment all summer
Yeah.
by shooting hundreds and hundreds of arrows. So I know that when the season comes around, I don't have to do nothing. I just could show up. You know, excuse me. But that's what I use it for.
Yeah, that's tough. So how do you get, you might have already answered this then. How do you get competition ready versus, you know, hunting ready?
I don't. It's all one thing to me.
It's all one thing, right?
It's all one thing to me. Yeah. I mean, competition's shooting my bow. You know, like here in Michigan, I do very good in Michigan as far as competing. But when you show up to something like IBO Trad Worlds, you know, my first and second places in Michigan are like my 16th through 20th places at IBO Trad Worlds. But it's because I'm continuing to put myself out there and just applying pressure. And eventually your form's going to turn into a diamond, or you're just going to get better, right? You're just going to continue to see, hey, this is working. Under high stress environments, I black out. I don't know what I did, you know, but you'll never learn that unless you go to it. Just like when you shoot a deer, some people are like, I don't know what happened. I'll be honest. I shot my bear at 5 yards when I was in Alaska. I didn't hit full draw. I didn't do nothing right. You know, it was just so damn close. It was just so close. It just happened, you know, like I wasn't expecting the bear to come from that way. It snuck up behind me. I was just like, oh, you know, but because of repetitive shooting and just, you know, I hate to call it autopilot, but that's what happened. It went autopilot. We go blackout mode and you don't remember. But if you continue to put yourself in high pressure situations, when that opportunity does come, you get that heart pounding in your chest, you know, all that stuff. You know, you can kind of slow it down, you know, like you can take real life and slow it down and fall back on your training. But if you don't ever train at that level, you're never going to know. You know, I got some friends, you know, in a unit that people don't talk about, and they say faster than real life, you know, and the way that they look at that is you need to be able to move faster than real life if you want to live. So shoot fast, move fast. But if you think about it in the stick bow world, you know, you want to be able to know your stuff so well that when that moment happens, you can kind of slow it down and continue to make that. So it's the opposite of what that is. And I take that stuff to heart because I think that's what makes a good archer great. And that's what makes a great archer the best archer. You know, like those guys are all in the moment. That's the one thing that separates the pros and even me is their ability to stay in the moment, you know, in their shot process throughout that whole time. Where guys like me and you are like, oh my God, it's done. We're like, and did I hit full draw? Like, I think so. You know, and the camera don't lie if you film yourself.
I find it funny that you're comparing me, and so anyone that's listening, we're not the same. Dan is so much superior. He's so much better. I do when I get to about here and I go, okay, I'm on a 3D target. I go, as soon as I start pulling this, there's no turning back. And I'm like, you know, so just do it. So, and then that's kind of why I screw up. But anyway, Dan is a fantastic archer and hunter. Hey, so you're answering everything I want to ask you, but pull one of those things out and for a beginner, you know, sort of my group, people who listen to this channel, the beginners or people trying to get into trad archery. Do you have like one piece of magic advice for them?
Yeah, don't overthink it.
Okay.
For real. Yeah. So and you know, like, because if you go down a rabbit hole with a stick bow, it doesn't matter if it's recurve, longbow, ILF, bare bow, whatever, it's going to be super overwhelming, and you're going to think about the wrong things. You're going to think about arrow weight and tuning and all that stuff. Man, pick up the bow and start shooting. You're going to, and then after you start shooting, get a coach, right? Don't shoot enough to where you're creating bad habits, but have fun with it. Figure it out a little bit, you know, and then get yourself a coach and then start diving into that stuff. Because if you can't hit, you know, a stop sign or a paper plate at 20 yards, you're not going to be able to tune it anyways.
Yep.
you know, because you can't, I mean, you
You're
used
not
to
gonna create.
qualify with your rifle. You can't zero rifle if you're shooting here, here, and here.
Yeah.
You got to be able to group, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, like take it, yeah, don't overthink it, because there's so much stuff on the internet. I think that it, people listen more than they do. You know, like I love podcasts. I use podcasts for long drives or going to work or going out hunting, stuff like that. But if I listen to something and I like it, then I go apply it, right? I try to figure it out for me, because what might work for you might not work for me, and vice versa. And that's what people don't do, is they don't put the time behind the bow. You got to, and that's what's so frustrating to most people, is because they're like, why can't I figure this out? It's because you never figured it out in the first place, you know, and you're starting to add all this more knowledge on, and you don't know where you're at.
So I like that point that you made. Start shooting a bow before you get a coach, because I think you can save time and money. Like you don't want to be going to a coach and going, where do I put my fingers? What am I, you know, like you probably want to take like a basic course with a bunch of different people if you can in your area, but then do that, practice for a while, then get a real coach, and then start working on coach. And I know we keep saying get a coach, but there's other ways to get
a mentor, a friend, you know.
Right.
I mean, our community is so close knit, in my opinion. It's great, right? You can literally reach out to anybody, and some people will give you good information and some will give you bad information, you know, and that's where, but again, you won't know if it's good or bad until you try it. So, so good advice, you know, get a bow, don't break the bank with it, you know, shoot for maybe a month or two, figure out the basics, right? This is where my fingers go, my bow hand, stuff like that. There's plenty of videos out there about just basic fundamentals of archery form. And then if you want to watch something later like the NTS or Tom Klum or Rod Jenkins, then I recommend doing that. I definitely recommend doing that within a year of picking up a stick bow, if not sooner. If you can afford it and you've got time for it, definitely jump into it. But I think your money is going to be better spent on getting into it first and then doing that, you know. And it's only because, one, you're not wasting the instructor's time, but you're kind of, you can get a lot of that information for free versus paying somebody $50 an hour to do it, right? And that's where I think the most fun is.
Join a club if there's a club in your area, and
a club, a league. Exactly. Get into that kind of stuff. Surround yourself with like-minded people, and that's where you're gonna soar. You know, it's incredible what you can learn from the guy next door, like the street down the road from you, that you didn't even know existed, you know, but you meet him at a club. Now you've got a best friend and you're like, this is awesome. You know,
you
I think a lot of new guys overthink it. A lot of new people, especially because there's so much information out there. EFOC, right? The whole FOC craze. Tuning, you know, like node tuning. What's node tuning? It's where 2 points of your arrow, right? You know, like there's so much stuff out there that people are just like, man, I got into this to be simple. Well, make it simple. You know, like get a bow, start shooting, get a coach. You know, that's what I would recommend.
Literally, the other thing too, if you need to get a bow, there's a couple different places to do that. So Dan alluded to the fact, don't spend a lot of money, and meaning there's a great aftermarket. There's great aftermarket places to go, and you can go online into these forums where they sell used bows, and you can ask questions. Hey man, what was a good bow? Is this a good bow? Ask the guy you're buying it from. You know, they usually are not going to bullshit you. I find I've bought used bows.
Samick Sage.
Samick Sage, yeah.
Samick Sage.
Samick Sage.
Cheap, but it's built tough and it works. You know what I mean? You can, I hate to say it, but I bet if you put a Samick Sage in one of these top level guys in the bare bow class, probably walk circles around me with it. You know what I mean? It's a bow that's good enough to learn how to shoot a bow with, you know, and you're also not diving $600, $700, $800, $1,200 into a bow. But to your point with the forums and all that stuff online, I mean, if you've got the money, you can get a pretty decent bow for, you know, a few $100s.
For sure, a really good one,
yeah.
Just a quick note. Quick Shots is not sponsored by Samick, and With this,
No, it's a great bow though. I mean,
we're
honestly,
endorsing it. We love them. We love, yeah,
yeah,
the
it's a
Sam
good
Sage
bow.
it's a good bow, good shooter. And
And you can upgrade the limbs, like
that's
that's
right.
another thing. A lot of guys want to grab a heavier bow. Like I made the mistake. I'm sure a lot of other people made the mistake. And,
Yeah.
10, 12 years later, I still have some of those mistakes built in me. And
Wouldn't
it's just
you,
because,
so what would you recommend as a starting weight?
I mean, that's going to differ. If you look at most of the competitive guys that they can draw and hold back relatively smooth, you're looking at like 42 pounds, 38, 42 pounds. And I would say that's a pretty good starting weight. Uh, if you're younger or you can't pull that much weight, 25 pounds, 30 pounds, as long as the arrow sticks in the target, you're going to be fine. And that target can be a bale of hay, so as long as your arrow makes it to the target. I've got a bow at work that's literally just a stick with a string bent on it. So it's a long bow, but I think it's like 3 pounds, 4 pounds. I sit there all day with it when nobody's in the shop and I just work on form. But there's lots of things you can do. I did a video on this like when I first started. You can do what's called a string bow. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it's basically parachute cord.
Mm-hmm.
And you tie a loop in it, it goes around your hand, and you tie a knot on the string. And you have the long running end, basically another big loop that goes to your fingers. So basically what happens is you put your finger on the string
Yeah.
and you hold here and you pull it back till you can feel that. You've got the knot here in your hand, so you can kind of feel that little bit of back tension because you're pushing and pulling, and you can work your release.
Yeah.
That's parachute cord. That's like $3. There's lots of things you can do to work form. But the Samick Sage, if you want to shoot arrows, the Samick Sage is a great starting point. And anyone who says different, I mean, it's.
Yeah, I will say though, I did buy my wife 25-pound Galaxy, which is sort of I think it's a new brand. I don't think they call it Samick Sage.
Is that Lancaster's
Yeah,
brand, or is
Lancaster.
that?
I don't know, but you get it out of Lancaster, and I always like to give a shout out to Lancaster Archery because they actually help a lot.
They do a lot. Yeah.
They do a lot, and you can call them up, and they will talk you through buying a bow if you want to get a new bow. And quite honestly, the Galaxy I could have got used for my wife, but I got her this Galaxy bow. I think all in with arrows and stuff like that. It was $150. But I mean, I didn't think that was terrible. And
No, it's not. Yeah, that's awesome.
25 pound. So the arrows I got are super, super thin, right? That she shoots out of that bow, and they're I don't know, 800 spine or something like that. I don't know. But they work really good, and she hits my 3D range out in the backyard, and all her arrows stick. So, it's get whatever you can comfortably pull back. But if you're an average, teenage male, and 38 to 35 to or 36 to 40 pounds would probably be good.
It's all what's comfortable, right?
And then you have to join the Army Special Forces to get to 55 pounds like this dude here.
So I wasn't Special Forces.
Okay, sorry.
I was just a paratrooper. Yep. Nope. I was.
Okay, well, in Canadian Army, if you're a paratrooper, you're Special Forces, man.
I wasn't.
Okay.
I wasn't. I mean, after I got out of the service, I did some contracts that's where I worked with. I worked with nothing but SF teams. I mean, my whole team was basically SF guys, and we taught international special operations teams. But I personally was the low man. I mean, not the low man, but I was the least qualified. We'll say that, as far as like accolades go, in schools. So
it's still pretty awesome.
I dug it. It was fun. I outlasted a lot of them. So if that says anything, but it was a good 2-year run.
Hey man, thanks again for your service. We really appreciate you, and thanks for being on the show, man.
Yeah, I kind of go off the wall sometimes. So any rants, I apologize.
It's brilliant. Where can we find you again? Give us one more time where we're going to find you.
Just Longbow Dan. You can Google it. I'll pop up on YouTube or Instagram, Facebook. I'm a lot more active on Instagram. It just feels like it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
YouTube, I put out a video. I put out a couple, a month. I probably should do more, but I like quality information over just putting stuff out. So that's what kind of keeps me from doing it. A couple new things in the works, but we'll see how it goes from there.
Perfect, brother. And thanks very much for everyone sticking around with us. Stay safe. Thank a veteran. You know, if you're listening to this on November 11th, you know, you don't have to go tell a veteran, you know, thank you for your service. They don't, that's not necessary. But if you do know them, and you do know a veteran, or you do know someone in active military on November 11th, why don't you just give them a text or call and just say hi? Just say hi, how are you doing? That's all it takes, man. Just to show the respect that for our military, our service members in Canada, U.S., all of the allied nations. So really appreciate you guys. Don't forget your veterans on November 11th. Take care.